The Speed Got GIF, aka the Cyclops Sonic mod, just got an update, and in this video, I want to give you the backstory of Cyclops Sonic and also the backstory of each of the extra characters that we see in the mod as well. So the creator of Cyclops Sonic was actually a person named Crazy11 on Twitter, and they explained the backstory like this. So basically, the Cyclops first appeared on Little Planet, and they're able to transform people into mindless slaves in order to make them do their bidding. So in this mod, we actually have 3 people that are corrupted. Obviously, we know that Sonic is corrupted because he's the main antagonist of this mod, but we also have Tails and Knuckles. Now, the reason that you may not have seen one of those 2 people is because only one of them will pop up, and it depends on the way that your scroll arrows are going, right? So if you have up scroll set on your game, you'll actually get Tails that pops up, and if you have down scroll set on your game, you'll get Knuckles that pops up. Honestly, I only ever play up scroll, so I'll never probably see Knuckles. Now, something I found interesting is that a lot of people thought that they were playing as Cyclops Sonic in this mod, but you are actually Boyfriend and you're just in this pitch black darkness. And knowing that, it also leads to the question of where's Girlfriend in this mod, meaning that she could be somewhere also in this darkness on her boombox like always, or she could be one of the people that ended up getting corrupted by the Cyclops. Now, there are a couple of interesting facts about this mod though, one being the anti-pause feature. So basically, pausing the game is impossible during the song Control, and not only can you not pause, but you can't even close out of the game. The game will simply continue to play in the background, and it truly does let off the sense of you having no control over what's happening on the screen right now, unless you are actually hitting those arrows. Now, the next character that we see in the mod is called Schoolhouse Sonic, and this character may be unfamiliar to you because he's from all the way back in 1996, and he was from a game that wasn't necessarily super popular. Sonic Schoolhouse is basically an educational computer game that teaches young people mathematics, reading, and spelling. Now, I assume that it didn't do as well as people thought it would do because it was supposed to be a full series, but Sonic Schoolhouse is the only one that actually ended up getting released. And if we're being honest, educational games are hit and miss with people. The next character that we see pop up in this mod is actually battling against Cyclops Sonic, and that is Fatal Error. And since I just did a video on his backstory, I'm going to go ahead and place that here. Now, fun fact here is that Fatal Error's story doesn't actually start with him, but it starts with a computer AI known as Eris that was created to be one of the most, if not the most human-like AI in existence. Her creator had spent hundreds of hours on her, and she was perfect, with a personality, human-like mind, and even feelings. It was the best AI in existence. That is, until the creator had noticed she was getting curious, Iris was exploring around his PC and was doing things questionable to what she was built for. And eventually, she started crossing the lines without even knowing it. Now, this caused the creator to try to pull the plug on her because he was basically getting afraid that she was getting too smart, and he tried to delete her, but she kept resisting. But eventually she started to be torn apart by this deletion. Her code broke, she glitched, and broke immensely. Now, in the creator's rash actions, he had done something worse than just to keep her active. He actually ended up corrupting her, and this gave her even more power. And once Eris realized what the creator had done to her, she took full control of his PC, not allowing him to do anything with technology. After a full year tormenting her creator, he couldn't take it anymore, and he ended up unaliving himself, leaving Eris with full control. Time had passed, and Eris took on a new name called Fatal Prime and started hungering for more code and more data. So she basically created a series of copies of herself, simply known as Fatal Copies, to go out into other people's PC and gather code to bring back for her and to feed her. They were basically her puppets, and they did all of her bidding. That is, until one day, Fatal Prime was in the middle of producing another Fatal Copy when something went wrong. The copy was resisting, pulling off more code from Fatal Prime than it should have, and it came out a lot more mangled. This copy disgusted Eris. With Fatal Error now being created, he was a lot more sentient than the rest of the Fatal Copies, and just like Eris, aka Fatal Prime, he started to question his existence, why he was created. And the only conclusion that he came to was that Fatal Prime sickened him to his core. He wanted nothing more than to see her grovel in weakness and pain. Now, after a while, Fatal Error was actually sent out to gather code just like the other Fatal Copies, but Fatal Prime made sure that Fatal Error could not come back because, as we said, she hated him. Fatal Error ended up finding himself in a random person's PC, and the first file that caught his attention was a Sonic 3 and Knuckles ROM. Now, at first, he was just going to consume the code and move on, but a spark arose in his mind. He basically wanted to have a bit of fun for himself for once. So to do this, he actually entered the game and he began to corrupt all the inhabitants, aka all the characters in the game. Now sadly, Fatal Error's first victim was Sonic, and he basically hunted Sonic down, chasing him through the launch base, and when he captured him, he basically ripped off pieces of his body and he entered his torso. And this is why in the first form of the mod, Fatal Error actually looks like a corrupted version of Sonic the Hedgehog. Fatal is basically using Sonic's body as a vessel. And if that wasn't bad enough, the rest of the characters characters soon followed, meaning Tails, Knuckles, Eggman, and even Metal Sonic ended up being corrupted by Fatal Error as well. And they basically got given a fate worse than death, kind of like how Sonic the EXE does to his victims. Fatal basically turned them all into cold puppets, and now he controls them like a marionette. The only thing that they're able to do is whisper for help. Now the saddest part here is that even after Fatal Error corrupts all these characters, their original code still exists in the game, so it's kind of like they have a ghost form that is still wandering around the world and able to see what has happened to their true form. Sonic has it the worst out of all these characters though, because he was supposed to be like the hero of this universe, so he was really broken down with the fact that he couldn't actually save his friends. And when he finally had enough of actually seeing them being tortured, he did try to actually fight against Fatal Error, but Fatal Error actually ended up taking Sonic's original code and consuming it, basically making Sonic forever a part of himself. And to make that clear, because I know that sounds kind of weird, it's basically like Fatal Error first took Sonic's body and then he went back and took Sonic's soul. So now Sonic is completely consumed by Fatal Error. The worst part about all of this is that once Fatal Error figured out the power that he actually had and how he was able to use that, he figured that he didn't actually need Fatal Prime anymore. He understood that he has the capability to be stronger than pretty much anybody in this universe. And since Fatal Error saw how well and how easily he was able to corrupt this Sonic ROM, he went to other PCs and started corrupting even more characters. He basically set a goal for himself to not only be stronger than Fatal Prime, but to be the most dangerous EXE character, period. Now, something that I find interesting about this mod is that we get to see Fatal Error actually going up against Cyclops, which makes sense in a way, since in Cyclops' backstory, it seems like he actually appeared in the Sonic universe, aka within a video game. It makes sense that Fatal Error would run into Cyclops at one point or another. Now, something else that I find interesting in the mod is that it kind of showcases that Fatal Error is stronger than Cyclops, because at the end, it seems that Fatal Error is also able to corrupt this Cyclops version of Sonic. I say this because we see Fatal Error laughing at the end, and we also see Cyclops' eye turn red, which implies that he is now infected with the Fatal Error virus. Now, something else that I find interesting about this mod is that technically it's not in its final form yet. There's going to be at least one more update, and they're going to be adding Dark Sonic to that update. And for those of you that are interested, Dark Sonic's backstory actually goes like this. Now, this iteration of Sonic is actually from the TV series called Sonic X back in 2003, so most of you probably don't even remember this one. Now, there are two factors that actually make Sonic turn into Dark Sonic, and that's the combination of fake Chaos Emeralds and Sonic getting extremely angry. Now, there's a couple of things that are creepy about Dark Sonic's transformation. Just like Super Sonic, he gains this aura around him, but instead of it being gold, it's this dark purple color. And probably the most creepy thing about him is that he actually loses his irises and his pupils, meaning that his eyes are just plain white. And you even see that his skin goes from that peach color to being just a grayish color, making him look almost like a zombie. Now, there isn't a lot of lore for Dark Sonic, and that's because in the series, he only actually appeared in one episode. Now, what's funny about that though is that he's probably the most popular, or at least the top 3 most popular characters in the Sonic X series. He has the most fan art, there's been fan movies made for him, and fan fiction made for him. He literally has a cult following of people trying to get him into comic books and just his own spin-off as possible. And I believe if they would have included Dark Sonic into the Sonic X series more, it probably would have got more than just 3 seasons. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out this video on the screen here, subscribe today to become a member of the Ors Force, and we'll see you tomorrow with another video. Peace, peace.